product-led growth sucks, especially if you don't know what you're doing.
I made the same mistake too. Over 8 years ago, we did PLG before it's even called PLG, and it bombed. The only people that were actually converted were the people that sales reached out to.
That's Wes Bush from productled.com. You could say he knows a thing or two about PLG. And if you think it's just about turning on the self-serve button and watch the money roll in, think again.
Many people just think like, oh, that's all there is to it. I just got to do PLG. But if you just do PLG, it's not going to work. Big red flag if that's all you're thinking it is, because there's a lot more to it than meets the eye.
In today's episode of The Revenue Formula, we're talking with Wes Bush about why PLG sucks, how to fix it, and what you need to know before you run it yourself. Enjoy.
So, back to what always works with intros, it's children.
Kids.
Children, even though Wes doesn't have any kids, it's okay. You can be part of this intro, Wes.
All right.
My oldest is now at the point in time where he's going to start elementary school. So I'm living back, I'm getting back those old memories of what it was like in elementary school.
It sucked.
And you see, and you meet all those stereotypical teachers, get introduced to everything. And of course, and I think I told you this morning, they were like, they just could not get the equipment working. They had a PowerPoint, but they couldn't get the projector running. And it just said, replace lamp. And it's just like, yeah, good luck fixing that, guys. And literally the inspector of the principal of the school says, yeah, I've never been at a place where this just worked. It's just like, wow. This school is 7 years old, completely new facilities, and they can't get it to work.
Also, Mr. Principal, take some fucking ownership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it your place?
Yeah,
Come on,
exactly.
man.
And he went on to praise the technical service, by the way. I found that a bit funny.
So now, Mikkel, let's bridge this to the episode.
That's going to be so technical issues. Yeah, I'm grasping for straws here.
Yeah, me too.
Today is really a tough day, Wes. I'm sorry. Let's get into the stuff. Let's get into the stuff.
So, if you haven't guessed it already, we have a guest with us today, and it's Wes Bush, founder at productled.com. Hi, Wes. Really nice to have you here.
Yeah, so happy to be on the podcast. I'm looking forward to this.
I think we actually ran into each other in Malmö.
Yeah.
What is it, like a month or something like this
something
ago?
like this.
We were meeting up, we're all pilgriming. I'm not sure if you say it like that, to basically Jacko. And Sassy was also in the mix. But, while as we were wrapping up, having a chat with Jacko, kind of you were walking in and we were like chatting and talking about product-led. And then obviously that you needed to join the show, right? Kind of that's how, sometimes how these connections are being built. So really, really nice to kind of have you finally on, and really looking forward to discussing some of the topics here today.
Likewise. We're going to take a confrontational view of PLG, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. We
throw me on the roaster.
We like those catchy subject lines. No, that's exactly what we're going to do. And I mean, you've coached quite a few companies by now. You're also running a podcast, I believe, called Product Led. So this is not, just a hobby of yours. Mm-hmm. This is a profession that you work with daily, just to establish, your expertise. And maybe you just want to share a bit of your background as well.
Yeah. So like what I do every single day, I just work with B2B SaaS companies to help them build and scale up their product-led growth motions. And typically what that looks like, how I measure my own success for these companies is, did they grow their self-serve revenue significantly? So over the last 324 plus companies I've helped, we've been able to help them grow over $1 billion in self-serve revenue. So this is something I absolutely love. I get a ton of joy from, but I also am here because at the end of the day, the bottom line is I want to help you create that leverage in your business so that your product can actually sell itself.
We have a lot of folks listening that are probably sales-led or whatever other led than product-led. And there's still this, I think we had a couple of really, really awesome PLG thought leaders on the show. We had Leah Tarrin, we had Dave Boyce, we had Kyle Poyer, we had Jesus, who's maybe kind of not a big influencer, but kind of he's been to a couple of really cool places. And there was, we got a lot of education when it fits, when it doesn't fit, why to go for it in the first place and so forth. Lots of the basic and the one-on-one. But I think a lot of our listeners are also like, all of these folks come to us every day and it's like, oh, the product should sell itself. And, all of this is just, wonderful. And I think many of them are kind of sitting there and a little bit calling BS. Like, hey, you know what? Actually, I don't believe the hype. I don't believe the, it's just a fashion and it will go out of fashion again. And what we wanted to discuss here today is, why does PLG suck?
And then maybe also how to make it not suck. And that would be a good kind of conclusion in the
right?
end.
So we obviously kind of want to navigate this a little bit, but let's kind of, it's almost like the anti-hero in your world. Kind of what would be, let's just say someone inbounded and said like, hey, productled.com, I really need your help right now, Wes. What would be, signs where you look at this like, you know what, actually, I need to, I'm not gonna engage, hands off. That's not gonna work. What would be, your worst nightmare customer, basically?
There's so many ways, like areas we could take this, like as far as like understanding your business, your industry. But where I would love to start is, what's your knowledge as it relates to PLG? So the biggest, I guess, toxic thing whenever I think of like, oh, you're doing PLG, and we have a conversation like, yeah, Wes, I really want help deciding like what is the right free model for me. I heard like quick time to value is important. So, okay, maybe we'll focus a bit on our onboarding. Like pricing, yeah. It's got to be transparent, right? So let's throw something up on the website. And they kind of start with those like first three things. And that's PLG for those companies.
Yeah.
And I made the same mistake too over 8 years ago when I was working in this company called Vidyard. We did PLG before it was even called PLG. And we launched this product, and it was a simple 14-day free trial, and it bombed. Like, it didn't even work at all. The only people that were actually converted were the people that sales reached out to kind of salvage that free trial experience. Like, oh yeah, we know that product sucks, but like, let us help you go through and understand the true value you can access outside of this free trial experience. And so, yes, PLG sucks if you don't do it and you don't understand like what else goes on. And so the really big thing, like why I even went to Melmo to kind of share in my talk, was like, PLG, it's only half of the story. And many people just think like, oh, that's all there is to it. I just got to do PLG. But if you just do PLG, it's not going to work. And so I could dig more into that, but that would be my first like big red flag if that's all you're thinking it is, because there's a lot more to it than meets the eye.
So meaning it's a, on the journey that they for some reason had the idea they want to embark on, if they're super surface level, think it's about pricing, it's about time to value, it's about, these kind of things, that would be kind of a red flag for you, right? But here you could say like, well, but Wes could educate our way out of this, right? Kind of, that's probably also a lot of the stuff that you're talking about. And it's also the product-led organization, I guess, that needs to sit behind that in order to enable these things, right? But are there like hard, I don't want to say hard facts, right? But are there like specific things where, you know what, yes, I'm a very positive PLG thinker and we're going to make everything work with PLG, but honestly, those areas, probably my, ICP version D, right? Kind of the least interesting one. Kind of would love to hear from your side, kind of what would be an inbound way you say like, this is actually outside of my comfort zone, and therefore, yes, we can make everything PLG work, but I think it's going to be difficult for those guys.
Yeah, one of the biggest clarifying factors is, are you solving for simplicity or complexity? A lot of enterprise companies, they do an amazing job solving for complexity. Oh, you're this big Fortune 500 company. Let's create a solution that will blow your mind away, and it'll solve that specific enterprise use case. And then there's the other side where it's like, hey, we're going to be solving this for the majority of small, medium-sized businesses. We're going to create something that's like standardized, gets majority of people to value, and that's solving for simplicity. And so the very first step we always go through with companies is, what is your strategy? What are you trying to actually accomplish with your specific business? And when we get into that, we, obviously like go down and try and decide like, okay, who are you serving and all those fun things. But the really big kicker here is, how are you going to win in your space? And if, let's say, it has nothing to do with having a better user or customer experience, like that's not even registered on that. It's like, oh, we got to do that to win. Then it's like, well, okay, maybe that's not the right play for us. Do you have to have a free moat to really stand out and win? It's like, well, if not, then it's like, okay, maybe it doesn't make sense there. But where I see a lot of companies, I guess, obsess about this question, like, should we do it or should we not? It's usually because they're not clear on what is their vision for the business and what is their overall strategy. They don't actually have a clear way of like, how are they going to win in their specific space?
I think that's interesting also because you mentioned earlier, like PLG is not something that just stands alone. And I think I've always wondered when I read about it, it's like, oh, it's amazing. You built it, just add some virality, and then it kind of goes. And when I think about it as a motion, if you just add self-service, that doesn't then follow you're gonna get business through. You need to do other things as well to kind of drive attention and awareness of the stuff you've built, right? And I think one of the probably outcomes we've seen of this is, I read that this is probably the most effective motion there is because you don't need any marketing, zero marketing budget necessary, zero sales budget. So it's just the most effective motion. And I think we saw, what was it? I can't remember whether it was OpenView.
I think it was Inside Partners, actually.
Inside Partners showing, and it's so funny. I read a blog post that had not been updated since COVID, showing the growth of PLG-led publicly traded companies versus non-PLG. And I know for a fact how that curve broke down afterwards and normalized.
You invested in the wrong companies.
Basically, that's what happened. Yeah, I'm broke. So that's a good thing we don't do, investing advice on this show.
Yes.
But it's just to say that kind of returned to normal after that, boost some companies saw. And I'm just wondering, like, do you see this as one of the most effective motions, and how do you see this, combination of supporting elements that's required?
Yeah, so as far as like a $0 like customer acquisition cost, most product-led SaaS companies, that's definitely not the case. So I would kind of question that research. Like there's only been one founder I've interviewed where they're like, oh yeah, we have $0 customer acquisition costs. And when you hear the company, you're gonna be like, oh, of course, Mixmax. Like whenever you're signing up for free, it's like every email you send is like powered by Mixmax. And it's easy to kind of grow from virality. I mean, not easy. They put in a ton of effort to kind of grow that. But that was an amazing virality effect with that specific company. And so very often, like you're still spending a good amount on marketing, sales, all that stuff in a product-led company. It's just less. And so back to the like public companies on that end, yeah, like that's an interesting one where you think like, okay, there's product-led companies were hit harder than these sales-led ones. I don't know the exact companies you're referring to, but when it comes to is product-led growth more effective than sales-led growth, let's just unpack it. So let's say a user can sign up for your product all on their own. They don't have to talk to sales, anything like that. Is it more effective? Yes. Now, if that same user can go into your product, sign up, like get to value without talking to anybody, is that more effective than hand-holding them and hiring a customer success person to help them out? Yes. And then when it comes to upgrading, when they can sign up all on their own, is that more effective than talking to somebody on sales side? I mean, you tell me, like for that efficiency for scaling a team. And when it comes to some of the metrics where it's like, okay, there's like, $3-4 million in recurring revenue businesses where it's like 3 people, it kind of begs the question of, is that a very efficient business? It's like, yeah, the only way they could have created that leverage and efficiency is with a very effective product. So that's the way I look at it. I think definitely for small, medium-sized businesses that are product-led, I've seen them be able to scale way easier and faster with this leveraged model versus, okay, I'm strapped for cash, got to hire more salespeople to kind of feed this engine. And that's where I see the leverage difference.
Yeah. Would you say that would you say is there a difference? So if you're kind of going really early, right? So usually kind of our listeners are maybe, in the go-to-market fit stage or beyond that. Sure. But if you go really early, pre-product market fit, basically, do you see any difference between PLG being a better way to get there? I mean, there's so many different definitions out there, so I don't want to kind of confuse everyone around this, but do you think this is a more efficient way to actually get to quote unquote product market fit, using a PLG motion?
So regardless if you decide like go product led or sales led, when you're first starting out for PMF, what I always recommend is like founder led sales. You got to do it.
Yeah.
Don't avoid that. And I have seen some like product-led founders where they're like they get themselves in trouble when they just be like, oh, let's automate everything right away.
Mhm.
And there's some products where you might have to think like that, but very often it's like, no, get talking to these users,
Yeah.
understand them. I There's no fine line in the sand that says like, hey, get to this amount of revenue, but I'm like, at least please sell like 6 figures of this
Yeah.
product before you think about what is the right go-to-market motion for this business. You can easily do that from founder-led sales, and then you could start to ask yourself some good questions like, how would we 10x this? What would break down if we 10x this? And a lot of times at that stage, I talk to founders, they're like, yep, I'm doing the sales calls, I'm doing the onboarding, I'm doing all of these things. Man, wouldn't it be nice if you could delegate a lot of that to a product? Fantastic. Like this would be a much more efficient way of how we do that. And how we do that is okay, let's make it automated for
Yeah.
people to sign up. Let's make it automated for people to get to value and then upgrade on their own. And so that just helps founders actually delegate a lot more to the product versus just, oh, let's hire somebody and think like who, not how, which sounds like great advice. And then you look at your payroll and your profit, you're like, that's not good advice always.
Yeah. And I think the point here is also, really in this phase of you figuring things out, a person doing that rather than trying to implement that in code might actually be the more efficient way, so to speak, right? And
Totally.
then once you know what the aha moments are, what the triggering moments are, what the messaging needs to be, and then who your users might be. Once you know all of that stuff, I think it makes a lot more sense to tailor than this product experience around all the knowledge that you have acquired there. Now, if we were to flip this into, your 50 million, 20 million in ARR, and some, marketeer comes up and is like, hey guys, we should totally do this PLG thing. And you're gonna have lots of reservations now around the strategy and so forth. And let's also get to that, by the way, because I think we haven't finished that topic yet. But do you think that, and I think some people call it a paper product, basically, do you think that kind of human approach to kind of get started in the PLG and then automating that, does it also make sense when you are further along in your revenue journey? Or would you say like, no, everything is learned and now just, build a product around it?
If I was to pick my poison,
Yeah.
I would always choose start earlier with the product led motion and then add on sales and do the hybrid motion.
Yeah.
I have helped a lot of bigger organizations go through this, where it's like they go from sales led to product led, but it's really friggin' hard to make it work. And part of the reason why is because it's not just PLG, back to what we were going through. It's like that's only half the story. There's the changing the strategy, changing the culture. That's actually one of the hardest things too. When I look at the speed and velocity of how a product led team can ship versus a sales led company, it's like the product led company can usually run circles around any other sales led company when it comes to the shipping side of things. And so it's just like, wow, okay, how do we install that earlier? That's fantastic. We could do that much, much earlier. And so that's really a big thing. The other thing is team. You got to change if you want to be product led. There's different capabilities your organization needs. So what do? Do you fire the existing people that you have? You're like, oh, we
Yeah.
got all these other people like customer success managers, fantastic, but the product's going to do like 80% of their job. Do we have to have that? And a lot of times sales like companies, they just don't have the, I don't know, the vision and the tenacity to go through with some of these changes because it's hard. There's people that it's like, hey, why do we got to do all that? And it doesn't always involve firing people and all that stuff. Usually it does though. Whenever we go through like strategy, the exact team you need, what capabilities do you fully resource, and
Yeah.
which ones do you kind of put on the back burner and say, you know what, that might have been our core product, but we got to create something new. And so if a company's at the stage where they realize like their core product, it's got maybe like 3 to 5 years of good life out of it, and they got to start off something new that's more product led. That's actually a great time to actually reintroduce this and set the company on that new vision and strategy right from the beginning and kind of rejig that company up.
Isn't there also like a challenge if they've been used to selling at high ticket prices? They might inherently just go, well, that's going to be difficult with a PLG. No way anyone's going to swipe a credit card with 2K MR and just, go. And I think also when you look at a lot of the vendors out there, they cater to, both the SMB with a low ticket price and then mid-market and even in some cases enterprise. So how do you see that side? Like, can you actually use PLG if you have high ticket prices, or will you need to kind of consider going a bit down and reshaping your pricing and packaging?
Yeah, like one of the 9 kind of core components we look at whenever we help companies go through that is pricing. And that's usually one of the big changes you would have to make going from sales-led to product-led, because it's like, you know what, your pricing, it is a sales-led company. It's usually hidden. Not a ton of people know. Obviously, your sales team should know. And you have something a bit more standardized as far as how it works, or you just do value-based pricing. But you want to get to the point where it's like we have value-based metrics, and those metrics will allow somebody to, let's say, start off with a $50 per month plan. And this could easily scale up to multi-thousands of dollars per month through that. And at any given point in that journey, you might have sales reach out and help accelerate that as you try and scale up that specific account. That's perfectly fine. That's in the product-led sales playbook. And so you can do that and accelerate those deals. But you do want people to have that flexibility of, hey, you could get started on your own. There's no friction here. It is easy to get started. You can easily understand which plan is the best for you, but just have at it, see what works. And if you need more support, we're always easy to get in contact with and to support you for the rest of this journey. And so that's always the approach I advocate for.
But you know what? Maybe that's also one of the reasons then PLG sucks, because now you need to go through the best exercise you can do internally. It's called pricing and packaging.
Yeah. But I also got to say, right, if you're like really honest about this, one of the reasons why PLG does suck is so first of all, it's not just a thing you lay on top.
No, exactly.
Right? It's actually, and this is super scary to people, it's a strategic shift. And I've seen some of those strategic shifts like being paid lip service to, but completely failing actually. Yeah, we totally want to do that. But also, no, we actually still need to deliver all of those features for those customers that we've signed last year. And, we do all of that other stuff, right? So I think, and this is almost my next question. Do you think that PLG needs to be an all or nothing kind of approach? Kind of, can you have it layered in and still be successful? I've rarely seen it, by the way. But is that even something that people should be thinking about? Let's just say they're 10, 20 million, right? Kind of, they're already kind of on their way. They're not yet big enough to, I don't know, need a second growth leg or a second, S curve to start or something. Strategically speaking, would you even recommend them going down this massive strategic shift to kind of just lay on top PLG?
Let's use like a sports analogy. So imagine like the best person in basketball, and like, okay, could they also be the best person skating or something like that? It's like, what are the odds of success of that? The best in both. It's like pretty low, right? Now, when it comes to your go-to-market motion, can you have more than one? The answer is actually yes. But what is the primary one? And you got to pick one or the other, because that is where the majority of your capabilities in your organization are going to come from. And so where I've seen a lot of companies, especially like at the scale stage, mess up is they had a really strong PLG motion, and then they started to get a little focused on the enterprise side of things. So they started investing all their time and energy there. They're like, actually, this little small PLG thing, let's kill it. Then they do that. And then about 5 years later, they're like, why is it so hard to get more enterprise deals? Wow, this is like a tough slog. And so then they end up reintroducing this PLG motion because they realized that was actually nurturing and creating a ton of this goodwill for some of those bigger enterprise deals. It just took many years for them to convert. And so that is the question I would really prompt people to think about is, what is your primary go-to-market motion that you're going to lead with? That's where you should put the majority of your energy, time, effort into scaling. And then you can still always layer on those secondary motions, whether that's product-led sales or you just go up enterprise motion on that end with that PLG motion that's leading it.
But it's interesting because I was also reflecting, there might be a few listeners out there who have, done this exact thing of layering it, maybe not killing PLG, but at least layering in PLG to a sales motion.
Yep.
And then going, hey, it's not really working. Like, not that well. We're getting some out of it, but it's not. Maybe we should cut it. How would you go in and diagnose it? And can definitely sense that, one of the areas to look at is what you basically just said, But are there other elements you kind of would say, hey, if you're right now struggling with PLG and you grow up with outbound motion, here's probably how you would start to diagnose whether you've actually built the right things that you need in order for that to take off?
Yeah. So the biggest question is like, are you actually intentional with what you're giving away for free? And most companies are not. Even if they have a PLG motion, a lot of them will be like, oh yeah, we've done the PLG thing. It didn't quite work. And I asked them, well, what did you give away? It's like, oh yeah, it's like 14-day free trial. And then I'm like, well, how long does it take to get to value in your product? They're like, well, it takes a few months at least to kind of get to value. I'm like, huh, interesting. I know exactly why it didn't work. And I'm being a little sarcastic, but like that is a really big problem, is like we're not very clear on what we're giving away for free. And when you're not clear, you give away something random, then you start to wonder like, well, why are people not upgrading? I'll give you an example here, even at Product Led. So our mission is to make what we like, the entire process, the product led system, implementation of how you could do this absolutely for free. You can get it all on our website. However, it's like, where is the free line for us? It's like, well, when you understand this is the best path, the product led system, the best 9 steps that makes it way easier, that is kind of like what we give away for free. And what's the next natural conclusion? It's like, would you like help implementing it? Fantastic. Like, we are the best people that could help you implement that. We're actually the only ones who could help you implement that because we are the ones who created it. Fancy that. And so that's really the biggest thing to think about, is like there's these 3 buckets of what you would decide to kind of give away for free. There's your beginner problems. Everybody has those. Think about like your early customer journey. Like they just got problem aware. Like, oh, this sucks. And then they're searching for different solutions, all those things. Like for us, it's like, oh, what is product-led growth? I'm not monetizing that. I would never dream of monetizing that. Like I'm giving all that stuff away for free. Then it's like, okay, you're going along that path and thinking about, okay, what's the right model? Okay, this is still free stuff. And then you finally bump up into like more intermediate problems. And those are the ones where like, oh, okay, cool. You struggle with that? That's like, we'll help you implement that. Or that's our first plan. And so when you have those kind of buckets, the beginner problems, intermediate, and then the advanced ones are usually the ones where it's like, hey, maybe you need to talk to somebody in sales to make sure we can like support you on that custom journey and stuff like that too. That's one of the best ways to kind of break down your go-to-market motions, because the beginner stuff, give that stuff away for free, get faster time to value, and you'll actually attract the majority of the total addressable market in your space, because those beginner problems, everybody relates to. A smaller, much smaller section of people relate to those intermediate problems, and even a smaller section really relate to those advanced problems that you solve in your market. So that's how I think about what you give away for free.
But I think you're so right, and it's actually hilarious because you know what I did today?
Tell us, Mikko. Tell us.
I bought a license for a PLG tool to build an interactive demo. And you know how I started that decision? You know, we've talked about it internally before, so it wasn't a new thing, but I just needed to know, can I actually build it with the software we have? Is it gonna make sense for those folks we want to show this interactive demo to? And that was one tool where I could go in and actually build it out. They had a freemium. And I knew I didn't want to use the freemium, but I needed to see, can I make it work and can it do some of the things that I need to? And I could. And I was like, okay, good. What price package are we then in? And you know, so I think you're right around the whole being intentional what you give away. It's like the first stage in the funnel almost.
Yeah. I had the same, funny enough, I had the same situation happen to me today. You know, we buy tools.
You also bought tools today? What? No way.
But it was coincidentally, was like actually today kind of, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that I think it can be a competitive advantage. I think it totally can be for your discovery, basically for the exploration and so forth. If you have transparency on your pricing and your competitors don't, then it's like, well, it's kind of easier to research, right? It's kind of it's ease of use or ease of implementation or ease of kind of whatever you want to say. The thing though, you know, that I'm thinking back, you know, to is I was CEO at this company. It was totally, you know, sales led, but it was actually 2,000 to 3,000 euros a year licenses that we were selling, right? And you know, you look at this thing, it's like, you know, I was just entering the organization and say, hey, that's just not going to work out. I'm sorry, we kind of need to kind of do it, you know, find a different solution to this thing. So I've been kind of going through some of those pains of trying to implement PLG in a sales-led organization, and now it's very thriving after I left, I guess. But one of those conversations, and it just triggered immediately when you said that, and was, we were sitting in this executive meeting, and I was saying like, well, if we really want to go down that route, if this is really what we want to do, we will run into a situation where there is a request from the PLG team to make the corners of this button round because ease of use and just pretty on the eyes and all of that stuff, versus building out that super custom payroll solution for Norway for this $200K deal. And we will sit there and we will, in all likelihood, always go with the 200K, whatever complex thing, right? So, and suddenly once you kind of put those things side by side, this is where then, became clear to us. And I think kind of that's also your point, Wes, for people in terms of, building the strategy around this. This is where the strategy meets the very hard gravel road suddenly of you needing to decide, actually, no, we're gonna prioritize all of the things that seemingly for us right now, nice to have, versus stuff that is hard requirements on the other side. What's your experience with that stuff, right? Because this is extremely, and this is one of the other reasons why PLG sucks, by the way. But how do you help companies, navigate through this and help them like, actually, sure, the strategy needs to be there, but how do you balance those two things actually? If you don't have a great answer, then it's like then let's have the conversation. But I think this is a massive issue when it really comes to, well, product-led growth means also the product team needs to be, fully bought in. And if they can't make roadmap decisions, then how is that going to work out?
Yeah. So I'm working with a company right now. They're 10 million in recurring revenue. This is exactly what they're doing. So they're like main core product, sales led. They're introducing this new one, which is kind of the future of the company. It's product led. And it's going to kind of revolutionize this business. It's really fascinating. But the answer to this question that you asked me is like, okay, how do we prioritize this? And what does that look like? The response and an answer I'm going to give you, it's like simple to understand and do, but it's really hard to kind of commit to when it comes to rolling this out, because part of our strategy, like the last piece of whenever we craft a strategy with the client, is we ask them, what are the strategic choices we must make for this to work? And what ends up happening is we get to the execution a lot of times and like, hey, like, why is this taking forever on the PLG front? They're like, oh, yeah. We were prioritizing those other things, those other deals, all those things on the sales side. I'm like, okay, so bringing the CEO, bringing the rest of the leadership team, are we going to make a strategic choice here to prioritize PLG? Or are we just saying this and, we're not really going to commit to this thing? And we had to make a strategic choice where we said, yes, anything with a label like PLG on it gets the green light, and that's priority. Why would we do that? And back to that example, like, let's think about even the math of that with the 200K deal. It's not so you can like, okay, just 200K now sounds great this month, but it's so that eventually every single month we got 200K in self-serve users that are just signing up for this product. And so it's thinking the longer term play here. And it's having the guts and commitment to make it work. Now, that's not to say like always the case, or like, sometimes there's just deals where it's like, this requires zero or very little customization to make work. But yeah, it's really that commitment. And so just making a strategic choice around it.
Yeah. I think it's super difficult to execute this, honestly. I really, because also the problem is even with the kind of getting going with PLG, the first 6, 9, whatever month is going to be incredibly underwhelming compared to the rest of the business, right?
Can I double take on that? Because yes. I 100% agree. And this is, if in my own words, the reason why PLG sucks the most is because PLG, it's hard to get started, easy to scale. Whereas a sales-led company, it's easy to get started, but it's really hard to scale. Yeah. When you think about, oh, we got to hire all these more people to grow, there's like different advantages, disadvantages to any strategy, but that is the one kind of biggest
Yeah.
one that I feel like really stands out, at least right now, as PLG is harder to get started.
No, and it's so easy to get discouraged. So, I mean, and I'm not talking from a CEO perspective because the CEO usually, long lenses on, and as long as we're not running out of cash by the time, it's like, it's kind of okay. But if you're the CRO and you're living quarter to quarter, and you're sitting there trying to prioritize roadmap items that help you the most, it's like, is it I don't know what is kind of the bird in the hand or the bird on the roof? I messed this up. But it's really wait a minute, I have this deal right here. They're ready to sign. Everything is done. Or I have this in 12 months from now. Maybe we have maybe we have a really nice motion going, right? And I think it's so incredibly difficult. I'm actually wondering, do you sometimes recommend folks to almost create a separate PLG product unit to basically like, hey, those headcounts, they're earmarked only for PLG stuff. And it's a smaller team, smaller business unit, so to speak, but you don't need to have this constant prioritization conversation. Is that sometimes it's probably not even possible, but do you sometimes see folks doing this?
Yeah. So like if they're around at least 10 mil or above that, that's typically the range where it's like, yeah, you could definitely spin up a team that is just focused on this. But it usually doesn't start that way. Usually it's people that are pitching an extra where it's like, hey, there's this special new product we're working on. And they're like pulling in the top leaders from each of the other teams and be like, hey, okay, we're going to spend, like 6 to 10 hours per week working on this. And then eventually when it starts to get some traction, momentum, it's like, okay, now these people, or maybe we're going to hire in some people that are just going to work on this. And then once they see a lot of success with that PLG motion, then it's actually usually gets to the point where it's like, okay, this is working. This is not just the PLG team. This is the entire company. And we're going to fully integrate this into what we do. And this is how we're going to sell. And so, yeah, it kind of goes from small to big most times.
I think what's just super interesting, and maybe this is the last question we're gonna end on, is it is a strategic decision. And I remember, some time ago we worked in the social media management space, and we had PLG vendors in there, and we were very late to the party. We never really got there, I would say, and actually succeeded anyway, I would say, relative to some of the competitors. So it is a strategic decision to make. I'm just wondering, to kind of maybe flip it a bit around, if you talk with a company who's facing a lot of PLG competitors, what would you actually advise them to do? Would you just recommend playing into that hand, or like how would you basically combat those vendors? Are there any kind of weaknesses you see that can be exploited?
Yeah, so let's play up that example in the social media space. So like all social media, let's say posting tools and all that stuff, they all have these free motions. And so you're thinking, how do we win? Well, this isn't so much about your go-to-market motion. Your go-to-market motion is one out of the kind of 3 core decisions you got to make. The very first one is like, what is the foundation you're building your business on? So your strategy, who you're targeting, and your model. So what do you decide to give away for free? So out of those first 3 decisions, you can differentiate and create something unique. I'll give you a perfect example. So strategy. Okay, we only do AI-driven posts. We do it better than anybody else. We have the best database. We use everything. Fantastic. Differentiate. Sure. Like over time, everybody's going to end up doing that anyways. But you're like, okay, right now, at least you could lean into that. Second is, who are you targeting? Well, most people target social media marketers and all those things. We're actually just going to target entrepreneurs of, busy entrepreneurs. They don't have time to do all this stuff. Okay, fantastic. We have another way to differentiate. Model. Oh, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to give them, 10 free posts a week where they can create this for free. This is their free motion. And there you have it. The next big thing is you have this irresistible offer that is just catered towards busy, maybe even if we make it really specific, SaaS CEOs. Then we go through, this is our strategy, how we're going to make it easier. We use AI. We train you based on all these things, and we deliver these fantastic results to help you get more leads for your business. And so that would be a perfect example. It's like, it's not rocket science, but your go-to-market motion would then support that next step of how do we scale that up? But yeah, those first 3 decisions are pretty critical as far as how do you stand out.
But also meaning, the motion is just one of those 3, right? Kind of that's basically kind of to your point there, right? And And I think to summarize it up, right? I think PLG is wonderful for so many reasons, but also sucks for a couple. And one, it's not that free revenue that this junior marketer is dreaming of when they're pitching that solution to the CRO. But also it actually requires quite a significant strategic shift, right? And that shift is not just layering on top, PLG. It's actually also rethinking, reworking your whole go-to-market and really the rest of your organization. Maybe accounting and legal and HR is going to stay the same, but everyone else pretty much is going to be affected by this thing, right? Your product organization, your sales organization, your CS team, etc. So really massive, massive shift if you want to do it right. And I think the learning here is, if you're only thinking about half-assing it, then rather don't do it. Then probably it's really gonna suck. We're using a lot of expletives today. Actually, we need to watch out a little bit. But maybe kind of last reflection on this, Wes, before we wrap. But that's I think some of the takeaways here today.
Yeah. And I think like 3 other things to think about this decision, if you're like on the fence, you're PLG curious, is you gotta have that conviction. That's like the very first thing. Like you got to feel like, hey, like this is going to make or break our business. You got to have like that level of conviction regarding this. 2 is the commitment. Like you mentioned, you can't half-ass this. It's going to suck if you try and do it. Don't just be like, oh, we're going to give this a month. No. You're building capabilities. It's like if you're to judge PLG on the first month, it's like judging me the first month I started skiing. I'm like falling down everywhere, and it's just awful experience. And it's like, okay, a year or 2 later, a little better, still not fantastic, but it takes a lot of commitment to make this work. And the third thing is, if you find you're the kind of founder where you're like, oh, I just want to create like a feature factory, I want to create a bunch of features, all these things, that might actually be something that hurts you more than helps you in a product-led company, because once again, you're solving for simplicity, not complexity. You're making things easier for a lot of people to go through. And that's actually part of the benefit of a product-led motion, is you can cater to, the Fortune 5 million of all these different kinds of businesses that are smaller, and they need something standardized that they can support. And people are looking for best single point solutions to be able to do this. And it's very hard to do, best in everything class product-led, because you got to onboard every single person individually. You got to have all that support too. And so, yeah, get that focus, get clear on what you want to do. And those 3 things will help you make that decision.
Amazing. Wes, thanks so much for joining. And by the way, I swear we did not coordinate this PLG purchasing today, but it was pretty fun anyway.
Didn't we?
Or did we?
Wes, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for educating the audience, and have a great day.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.